Support for Central Florida Public Media comes from UCF Continuing Education, offering professional development and corporate training services for the modern workforce. UCF Continuing Education provides a range of courses and workshops available in person or online, designed to enhance skills and knowledge in various fields. More at ce.ucf.edu.
To Engage here on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. Governor Ron DeSantis says he will veto a bill that was passed this week during a special session of the Florida Legislature. The bill is named the Trump Act, an acronym for Tackling and Reforming Unlawful Migration Policy. The measure was crafted to make sure Florida is in lockstep with President Trump's federal policies combating illegal immigration. Before this session began, it was clear the governor didn't have the support of the legislature. And what has come out of this special session has been criticized by the governor. I spoke with Central Florida Public Media's Rick Brunson, who has been following the special session and the reaction to the bill's passing. So, Rick, it's been quite a week for the Florida legislature and the special session first called by Governor Ron DeSantis. Can you just take us back to why the governor called this special session in the first place?
Yeah, hi, Sharon. It has indeed been a wild and interesting week in Florida politics. So let's go back for a second. On January 13th, the governor issued a call to the legislature to meet in a week-long special session beginning January 27th, which was this past Monday. When he called for this special session, he issued 4 pages of proposals for lawmakers to deal with on a whole range of issues, from combating illegal immigration, but also to reforming condominium regulation, to replenishing funding for the My Safe Florida Home program, to changing how citizens' initiatives end up on the ballot. It was a lot. So lawmakers dutifully showed up on Monday and gavelled in, but then they quickly gavelled out. And House and Senate leaders said they were going to take control of the special session and deal with just one issue, illegal immigration, and they were going to do it on their own terms. They ignored the legislation that had been filed by allies of Governor DeSantis mere hours before the session began and said they were going to focus on crafting one bill that they called the Trump Act that was put forward jointly by Republicans Lawrence McClure of Dover in the House and Joe Gruters of Sarasota and Randy Fine of Melbourne in the Senate. Then came the mad rush to debate and pass the bill swiftly within 48 hours, which they did on Tuesday night just before 9 p.m. The vote to pass was 82-30 in the House and 21-16 in the Senate. What's interesting to note is that 6 Republicans, allies of the governor, voted no on the bill with all of the Democrats.
Thank you, Rick, for breaking down and keeping up with all of this. So, what is in the bill?
So this piece of legislation is 84 pages long and will cost taxpayers at least $500 million if it becomes law. Now, here are the main points of what it does. It creates a new Office of State Immigration Enforcement and makes Commissioner of Agriculture Wilton Simpson the state's chief immigration officer. His job and the job of this office would be to make sure the state of Florida coordinates and cooperates with federal immigration enforcement authorities as they implement President Trump's policies. Next, most of the money in the bill would go to hire more law enforcement officers to be part of this coordinated effort and lease more bed space in county jails and state prisons to house migrants in the country illegally. But the bill also toughens penalties on crimes committed by undocumented immigrants and requires the death penalty if they're convicted of a capital offense. In addition, the bill requires law enforcement agencies to join federal detention efforts and incentivizes it by offering $1,000 bonuses to individual officers or deputies who assist in large-scale federal raids. And over the passionate objections of Democrats in both chambers, the bill also ends in-state tuition for undocumented college and university students as of July 1st of this year. An estimated 6,100 students received this benefit. There's a lot more in it, but that's the gist.
Even before the passing of the bill, DeSantis called the bill, quote, weak, an early sign that he would veto it. Two-part question here. What is it about the bill he disagrees with? Does he still plan to veto it as well?
Yes. He was in West Palm Beach this morning at a roundtable event with local law enforcement officials and the press, and he made very clear that he's going to veto what he called, quote, this swampy piece of legislation, unquote. In fact, he called the bill, and I'm quoting here, a very grotesque, weak piece of legislation, unquote. He said he disagreed with how the process was rushed and that lawmakers didn't have enough time to read what was actually in the bill. But what really angered him, that he made clear this morning, what he called the most ridiculous and indefensible part of the bill, was that it strips the governor of the authority to enforce immigration law and transfers it to the Commissioner of Agriculture. Now, he sees this as a clear conflict of interest because he said he highly suspects that the commissioner will protect the interests of the state's agriculture industry in its need for cheap immigrant field labor instead of enforcing laws against illegal immigration. In his words, and I'm quoting here, nobody elected the Commissioner of Agriculture to do immigration stuff. They elected the governor to do it, unquote. DeSantis said the bill would require state law enforcement officials to ask permission of the Commissioner of Agriculture to enforce the law, and he thinks this is very wrong.
So as he spoke about the bill this morning, what do you think the end goal is here?
Well, he's using his very large platform as governor to go around the state, and he's using conservative media outlets that support him to urge voters to call their legislators who voted for the bill and just give them an earful. He said this morning that that was already happening. My sense is that he's trying to wage a public relations campaign here to put Republican legislators who voted for this bill back on their heels before he vetoes it, and then get them to craft another bill more in line with what he wants when they reconvene for their regular session in March. What's interesting about that to me are two things. First, when they convene Monday for the special session, one of the very first things that House Speaker Daniel Perez addressed was that the legislature would not be bullied and would assert its own independence and do what it thinks most help President Trump and the citizens of Florida. And when he did this and said this, there was loud, resounding, sustained applause from the floor. Second is that the way the vote for the bill happened and the way it played out, lawmakers would not appear to have enough votes to override the governor's veto. So we will keep watching this in the coming days and weeks to see how this all plays out.
A lot to keep track of. That is Central Florida Public Media's Rick Brunson, who has been following this special session this week. Rick, thank you for breaking it down and joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Sharon.
There's more ahead here on Engage. A new proposal to support small businesses in Orlando in need of financial support before more are forced to shut down. The owner of Maffrey's Gift Shop in Ivanhoe will join Engage. This is Engage on Central Florida Public Media. You are listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. Ahead on this program, an all-star roster of NFL talent and their fans. They're in Central Florida for the 2025 Pro Bowl games at Camping World Stadium this week. A former NFL player living in Orlando joins Engage to give his perspective on the actual value of the flag football game and the new events that are happening this year. First, though, some small businesses in Central Florida are looking for support before it is too late and more are forced to close. Back in 2023, city crews started work on an infrastructure project for sanitary sewer improvements in Orlando. While those construction projects are needed, the disruptions to nearby businesses come at a steep cost to a number of the shops and restaurants in neighboring Ivanhoe Village. Last weekend, the Hammered Lamb, a pub and staple of the area, shut down despite many efforts to stay open. Given the ongoing challenges, Florida House Representative Ana Escamani and State Senator Carlos Guillermo Smith, both Democrats, announced plans to file the Business Disruption Assistance Act to mitigate the financial hardships of small businesses affected by public works construction. Some of the key provisions include a low-interest loan program, a marketing campaign, and an informational hotline for small businesses. Jeff Starks co-founded Maffrey's Good Goods in Ivanhoe Village. He opened the gift shop in May of 2020, expanded in September of that year, and still owns and operates the store today. Starks joined Engage to discuss what needs to be done for small businesses in the area to thrive. And I started the conversation by asking him to describe what customers experience when they walk into Maffrey's in Ivanhoe.
What they're going to see is an eclectic collection of U.S.-made, women-owned, socially good, eco-friendly, 14 local makers. I call them lanes. We're in a lot of lanes.
Okay.
So we've got pet, bar, ladies, men's. I've got a cursing corner with all kinds of fun cursing things. I've got snarky stuff. I've got a huge Florida section. We've got some kids' stuff. We've got stickers. You can walk into our store and spend $4, or you could spend $300 on an item. Mm-hmm. I mean, we range. We go from, there's something there for everybody. And so when people come in, we have 3 big, beautiful windows that overlook a lake. So the store is just naturally bright. You've got my natural light. You're going to get an experience, a very welcoming experience.
And I'm hearing the values you have as a business owner reflected in some of the choices.
We like for it to have at least one of those values. Okay. If we're going to put it in the store, some of them have all of them. Some of them have 2. Some of them have none. There are sometimes I find an item that is just so joyful and sweet and fun, but it has none of our values. But I know it's going to bring joy and a smile, and someone's going to love it. And so that in and of itself could be a 6th value.
For people who are not familiar with Ivanhoe Village, how would you describe it?
Hyper-local. It's a stretch of North Orange Avenue, south, depending on which way you're going, and then Virginia Drive. And it's probably maybe 5 city blocks total that is all local. Breweries, eateries, shopping. So if you want to get a local vibe, support local, experience what locals do, Ivanhoe Village really has it all.
So I get my hair done personally in Ivanhoe, and I have for years. And I'm frequently late because of all the construction outside. Sure. Blocking a lane is causing traffic to back up. You have to find a different route. So I know as a customer, it annoys me. I want to know how it impacts you as a small business owner.
Well, it impacts us greatly. Unfortunately, Ivanhoe Village just has a reputation for poor parking. It just does. So when you have a construction project that, whether visually or actually physically takes the parking spots, that is something, number one, we can't control, but also it just impacts people's ability to want to stop. I know as a consumer, if I'm driving through an area and it looks like it's a war zone and parking's not obvious, where do I go? I'm going to keep going. That in and of itself, like there was parking available for most of the construction, but the visual aspect of it was so terrible that people, and plus there were traffic jams and people were just frustrated with it, and then you look at it and you're like, I'll come back next time. Well, for some businesses, there won't be a next time. And we saw that with Hammered Lamb.
Is there a number you can give me? What percentage of business would you say you lost?
Well, going into August of last year, so from January to the end of July, we were down about 450 transactions from last year, which equated about 20% of our business, which is substantial. And I told my husband in early August, I said, listen, we just have to get good with this. With my history with Disney, I worked for Disney for 25 years in merchandise operations, and I'm all about budgets, all the metrics. And I said, this isn't good. And so I had to rework our entire business plan. I mean, and I'm a solo show, so I'm already doing it all. And now I have to go back and reconstruct our business plan to make sure, number one, we don't go out of business, but can we turn a profit this year? Right. So I kind of love that challenge. It's sort of kind of built in me. So, but going into August, it was not good.
Now, given that this construction is happening for good reasons, it's infrastructure improvements, road repair, utility upgrades, public works, what would you like to see happen differently?
Like I've told everyone in my letters to Robert Stewart, in my emails to Buddy Dyer, in my emails to the board of OUC, anyone who would listen, if I could get your email, you were hearing from me. Nobody was contesting the necessity of the construction. As a resident and a taxpayer of the city, I understand the infrastructure's changed. They've got to be improved. Nobody was disputing it. We weren't getting an argument from us on that. Where they epically failed was in the budgeting process of this project. Nobody had the hindsight to say, you know what, these businesses, while sure, the sidewalks will be open, you can physically get to the business, the disruption will be such that it's going to be incredibly difficult for these businesses to do business. So should we, in the budget, earmark some money for disruption? Now, long story short there, obviously there's a bill now that's hopefully going to be passed in the legislature that will actually become available. But there were other avenues the city could have taken. You know, they had money to give the Orlando Magic $14 million. So if you think about these already big businesses were getting lots of lucrative dollars from the city, and we understand that there's a necessity for that as well. We get that. But if you had taken 1% of that money and said, you know what, all the businesses in Ivanhoe Village have lost revenue and income. Oh, and by the way, they're still paying their taxes and they're still paying their utilities on time, because consequences, if you don't do that, it was like a bad breakup for me. You know, I was in love with the city of Orlando, and then I saw the true care and concern they had for small businesses, and it felt terrible. It felt terrible. You know, my feelings were hurt more than anything, because I was living in this idea, and I still believe that Orlando is an incredible city. I love Orlando. But what the city didn't do for us was very clear that some of the message points that they say about small businesses it's not completely accurate.
That bill you mentioned, I want to fill in a couple things. Representative
Sure.
Ana Escamani, Senator Carlos Guillermo Smith announced the Business Disruption Assistance Act. House bill was filed Friday. Senate bill was filed this week on Monday. This is to support small businesses affected by public works construction projects and mitigate the financial hardships during infrastructure improvements. What about the bill resonates with you?
What I like about it is that in the future, when these sorts of projects land on the doorstep of a small business, depending on what the bill actually can do for you, as whether it's a grant, a low interest loan, whatever it is, there is the potential for the small business owner to make a good decision for their own business as to whether they want to apply for any of that. And I think that just the fact that that lifeline is there for a small business, especially a new small business, we were fortunate. We were in year 5. And so all the assets were paid off. I don't have a lot of bill overhead, hanging on me, because it's all been paid for. And so this was my growth year. And that's the other thing that really stunk, was this was my growth year, where I really should have been able to grow my business. So I think that had this bill been in effect, I could have making a good decision as a business owner what I want to do, but it wasn't there. And I also think that it motivates people who want to open up a small business, that they see there's a lifeline out there. Should something happen down the road, it gives me some peace that there's a possible safety net here down the road. So I think that those are two things that I am happy to see about this bill.
You mentioned the Hammered Lamb. That's a restaurant, was a restaurant in Ivanhoe. Just last weekend held their 12-year anniversary and goodbye party. They said despite the best efforts, they had to close on Saturday, January 25th. And the owner had said construction started in 2023 that really hurt them. What was it like for you to see another small business in your community have to close?
Well, it was a double whammy, because Joey and Jason are friends of ours.
The owners.
So, so you see there's a personal connection and a personal hurt that goes along with it. And I told Jason very tearfully on Saturday that when we moved in 2020, up until when this construction started and they started having some real issues, that they took care of us. And that's one of the beautiful things about being in Ivanhoe Village and where we are, is that we all take care of each other. It's a very close, tight-knit small business community. And when we moved in, Jason said, hey, listen, we're going to, when there's a wait, we've got this little pager system, and we're going to put, go wait at Maffrey's, go get a cocktail at the bar and go wait at Maffrey's until your table's called. And then any sort of initiatives they did, like their Easter egg hunt in the park, or any sort of fundraisers they were doing, we were collaborative. There was such a strong collaboration between the two businesses. I have a big window that overlooks their patio. So of course, that's where my cursing stuff was. And people would be eating brunch and they'd come over. It was a huge collaboration. And so I told Jason, for the first 2 years that we were there, 2.5 years, he is what drove traffic into our store. And people have eventually found us. We're more of a destination now. We're more of a brand. We're more established. We've got our sea legs under us. But the fact that a business that meant so much to our business is gone because of really just poor planning. Just poor planning. That is heartbreaking to see someone else's dream closing in a way that wasn't necessary. How do you come to grips with that? It's really hard. And I really feel for them. But we are so grateful that they were there for us and they helped build our business.
How are you feeling about the future of Maffrey's?
Great. We're feeling so good. Like I said, we'll be celebrating 5 years in May. I think our social media presence keeps growing. We get our name out there. We get our voice out there. We get our values out there. It gives me an opportunity to talk about something that I love so much, which is supporting local and small businesses, people finding the real Orlando, which is downtown. So I feel really good about our business. I feel good about where we're going. It's going to be a good 25.
Is construction over?
No. I won't share the text I sent my husband, but corner from Oxford Ives, and every single parking spot had a orange cone in it, all the way down to Hammered Lamb. And I froze in my steps because I thought, what could be happening? There is another project we knew was on the heels of the project that just wrapped up. They're doing a road diet on Orange Avenue. When you're coming down, if you turn off Virginia and come down Orange, there's 2 lanes going south, 1 lane going north, and then our parking. They're taking one of the 2 southbound lanes, the one closest to the park, and that's all going to be parking. They're all the way to, I think, the hospital. So we're gaining a lot of parking. However, what they had to do was they have to stripe and realign traffic because they've got to close that lane. And thank God the project's happening at night. So that's a blessing. But they had to stripe everything. And so they had to close all of our parking yesterday. So, of course, I was on the horn with the cities. They sent out a flyer a month ago saying, hey, this project's coming. But no one tells you, oh, and by the way, there's a day you're going to lose all of your parking. So it's little things like that for the big guy, they're thinking about the big project, which, again, no one is disputing. It's the communication and the lack of consideration for us who are trying to thrive and run our businesses. I just want to remind people, there is parking available. There's a small lot at the end of the building. There's parking across the street at the park. There's our street parking. Please just take an extra minute and find it.
Jeff Starks is proprietor of Maffrey's Good Goods. Now, that bill we discuss is being endorsed by supporters like Starks. The president and CEO of the Eatonville Chamber of Commerce, LaVonda Wilder, said in a statement, quote, "Public works projects are vital, but they often come at a steep cost to nearby businesses. This bill is a game changer, offering much needed support to ensure that businesses can survive and thrive during construction." And Senator Smith released this statement: "Public works projects are a vital part of enhancing our state's and communities' infrastructure, but they should not come at the expense of our small businesses. This legislation ensures that businesses impacted by construction projects have the resources they need to weather the storm. I'm proud to partner with Representative Escamani on this important effort to protect and empower Florida's small business community." Coming up next here on Engage on Central Florida Public Media, the purpose of the NFL Pro Bowl from the perspective of a former player living in Orlando now. Just a reminder, if you miss any part of our show today, you can always subscribe to the Engage podcast and listen whenever it is convenient for you. This program will be available on demand at cfpublic.org. And we really want to engage with you. Let us know what you'd like to hear more about, what you're glad you heard. You can send us an email. Go to engage@cfpublic.org. Also, you can send us a talkback on the free Central Florida Public Media app. All you have to do is go to the menu, select Send Us a Talkback, record your question or your feedback, hit send, and we will get it and be able to see it. And there's always voicemail. Give us a call, 407-273-2300, extension 246, and leave us one. You are listening to Engage here on Central Florida Public Media. You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. The NFL Pro Bowl games are back in Orlando. The skills competition is tonight. Then this Sunday, 88 NFL players face off in a flag football game at Camping World Stadium, coached by Peyton and Eli Manning. In addition to the skills showdown and that all-star matchup, the NFL girls flag football game is a new addition to the lineup. Here's part of a kickoff press conference held in Orlando yesterday from Florida Citrus Sports, where CEO Steve Hogan speaks about his excitement for the week.
I personally love the Pro Bowl games. When we saw it last year and you pull the helmets off, you get to see these personalities and the families and just how they compete, how they engage with each other. I mean, to me, it's just a massive upgrade personally. I think it's been a huge success across the board, especially as being such a family destination. As you know, Orlando is the most visited destination in the world, and you think of the family nature of it with our theme parks and hospitality. You look around Camping World Stadium on a Pro Bowl games defining event like the flag events and all the things that happen inside the stadium, there's nothing but families. I mean, kids, moms, dads, it is a family get-together.
Hogan also said having the NFL brand here enhances Orlando's credibility as a city that attracts major events.
Obviously, the economic impact, studies have looked at this being north of $45 million each year. The exposure impact you couldn't buy, right? I mean, it's in the billions, and just people that are having fun, the impressions of these great players in the sun and short sleeve shirts and running around our theme parks and staying in great hotels. That's why you have these kind of events, but the investment in Camping World Stadium and the campus, sports entertainment campus, starting in 2014, is really why we got the NFL Pro Bowl.
When it comes to the NFL, Samuel Barrington has experienced it in a way many athletes dream of, but only a few achieve. The former football linebacker was chosen in the 2013 draft by the Green Bay Packers. With his playing days behind him, Barrington is a small business owner in Orlando. We asked him to join Engage to talk about the Pro Bowl games as someone who has been on the gridiron in the National Football League. I started the conversation by asking Barrington to take me back to 2013, when his life changed from college football player at the University of South Florida to NFL pro.
It was an amazing opportunity for sure. But because, I came to college with the intention of one day being able to further my football career beyond college, it was a moment I had always prepared for. And furthermore, I'm a proponent of not necessarily being caught in the moment, but seizing the moment. And so just as well as, I was excited, I was also focused and I was determined and I was driven to make sure, I saw that draft process through. You got to stay focused. You got to train. You got to hit all your marks. You got pro day, you got the combine, and then you do all of that for those 3 days of draft. And fortunately, I was taken on the third day by the Green Bay Packers.
That's such an awesome accomplishment. Congratulations. Now,
thank you. I appreciate it.
What was it like playing at that level?
It takes a while before you get what I call comfortable, right?
Okay.
And some people, they call it, that's when you're a vet. After that rookie year, you're now a vet. And so it's crazy because in the real world, you got to put 10, 15 years in before somebody considers you a vet at your craft or in your industry. But, year 2, year 3, depending on your performance and depending on your contribution to the team, they no longer start to see you as a young guy. It's like, okay, you're a vet, so you should start understanding how to conduct yourself here in the NFL. And so I was one of those guys who became somewhat of a vet very early. In my second year, I gained a starting position at middle linebacker. We had an amazing season. We win and we competed in the NFC Championship against the Seattle Seahawks, Marshawn Lynch, the Legion of Boom, Russell Wilson, such a great team. And literally the game came down to one play, and it was an onside kick. It was a botched onside kick in which we were the receiving team, and one of the guys missed his assignment. He went to catch the ball instead of block, and it was all downhill from there. But just an amazing experience. It's what all young people hope for, right? If you play the game of football. And I'm just so happy, right? It's left an everlasting stain on my life. I'm just so happy I was able to have that experience with guys that I'm now, lifelong friends with.
I can tell just listening to you, the tone of your voice and the detail that you remember just that game with, that obviously it had a huge impact on you as well.
Yeah, a huge impact. I mean, sometimes I can't necessarily put it in words, but it's one of those things where it's like, here I am, I'm 34 years old, I'm running my own company, I'm developing other companies, I sit on boards around town. And majority of the rooms I'm in, my colleagues are, outpacing me by 10, sometimes 15 years. And so I think the beauty of me getting to play in the NFL and being able to move on to what I call my second win, as a business owner, is a lot of the young guy stuff I got out of the way early. You know what I mean? The partying, the making money, the spending money, and everything. I mean, I got to live out that dream. And so now, my dream and my why is much bigger, believe it or not, than it was in the NFL. At that time, I just wanted to be a great football player, and I wanted to, help my team, to a championship. And so now I have the opportunity to impact lives, at a greater capacity, and I have an opportunity to sit in rooms that, I couldn't dream of. So what I always try to tell guys is if you can take the skill set that you gained throughout college and in the NFL and apply it to, life after football, if you're patient enough, you'll see some success.
Obviously, well, I'm assuming the goal is to make a playoff run and win a Super Bowl. But
Sure.
I want to know, from your perspective as a former NFL player, what did you think about the Pro Bowl in your career, which we have coming up this weekend in Orlando?
Well, first of all, to have the Pro Bowl in Orlando, which I was born in Orlando, I grew up in Jacksonville, went to the University of South Florida. I lived in Miami throughout my time in the NFL, so you can see I'm following a little trend here, right? I'm a Florida boy through and through. So to have the Pro Bowl here in Orlando, I think it's a great compliment to Central Florida. I'm really happy that that's happening, and I get to take my kids and, invite friends and business associates out to such an illustrious event. But during your time in the Pro Bowl, I mean, most players will tell you that, making the Super Bowl is obviously better than the Pro Bowl, but the Pro Bowl is the next best thing. It's one of those things where if you're at the Pro Bowl, that means that your team didn't make it to the Super Bowl, but it's also a way for you to end your season on a high note. You know what I mean? Because there are some guys who sitting in the Pro Bowl and their team didn't even reach 500. Their team, they lost more games than they won, right? And so being able to go to the Pro Bowl and spend time, right, with other players who are, special, and other players who will eventually go on and be Hall of Famers, it's just a great way to end the season on a high note. And you always respect the guys who made it to the Pro Bowl. I mean, if a guy got one Pro Bowl nod, that was a big compliment to him, and that pretty much set him up for, future business in the NFL, if I should say.
So in a way, it made that player more marketable to be named to the Pro Bowl.
Oh, for sure. Okay. If you get in the Pro Bowl, now you got all these off-season deals that are going to come to you. You're not just going to see NFL linebacker Sam Barrington. You're going to see NFL linebacker, Pro Bowl Sam Barrington. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or sometimes the Pro Bowl supersedes NFL. You'll see Pro Bowl linebacker Sam Barrington. And so obviously it makes the name more marketable. As soon as the off season comes, you got a ton of brands who want to get involved with you, because if you're in a Pro Bowl, that means your jersey is selling. That means a lot of people know your name. That means the kids know your name. And if the kids know your name these days, it's pretty much downhill from there, because the kids are the ones who are impacting the pay-per-click advertising. The kids are the ones that are playing the video games. The kids are the ones who are sometimes more fanned out than the adults, and they understand the game at a different capacity than the adults do sometimes. So you definitely get more advantage after attending the Pro Bowl from a marketability standpoint.
That's a fascinating perspective. Makes total sense. So you mentioned just being able to take your kids now that you're living in Orlando as a dad. Is that an experience that you would think other families experienced on the athlete side as well, just getting to do it in a different way? And you're not playing for the Super Bowl, but you're still playing for fans.
Yeah, I think beyond anything, and it's no secret that the nature of the game has changed. 10 years ago, you were watching some guys get hurt in the Pro Bowl. And now the game has shifted more to a safety first mindset, which I'm a big fan of. It elongates guys' careers. We live in a world now where we're much more conscious of people's rights and people's health and people's bodies. And so imagine a guy being a Pro Bowl, all-pro guy, and he comes to the Pro Bowl and he gets hurt. So the new nature of the Pro Bowl is really for the player's safety. But the fan engagement, I'd argue, might have gone down a bit, but it's still a very, very spectacular week, of events. This week, there's, in the past, they've done like an obstacle course. They've done dodgeball tournaments. And the Pro Bowl is it's nothing more than a flag football game at this point, which is okay. And the reason why I say that, and I don't know if a lot of people realize, but 2028 is going to have, countries will have flag football teams that are represented at the Olympics. And so the NFL showing the Pro Bowl in a flag football style, it's actually very strategic on their part, because they're promoting the game. They're promoting the future of flag football, which is now a sport that young ladies can also participate in. So I think it's a really good move by the NFL on multiple parts: players' health, strategic moves to promote the game of flag football, and still being able to retain fan engagement.
We're speaking with former NFL player and Orlando resident Sam Barrington. So we have the All-Star game wrapping up the week in Orlando on Sunday, and we have a skills competition, part of the Pro Bowl games, happening tonight. What do you think of it just being in the city where you were born and live now?
I recently joined the Greater Orlando Sports Commission Board of Directors. I'll tell you what, although I was born in Orlando, I would visit family here throughout my time in college. Moved back here in 2013 and maintained a place here all the way up until now. I think the best thing about joining that board is it gave me an opportunity. And our board, the individual who leads our board is Jason Siegel, and you'll see his name all around. We handle all sports interests that come to Central Florida. And so when I joined that board, it was very, very interesting, because I felt like I moved into a new city. I was engaging with people that I had no idea who existed here in the city of Orlando. I was going to places, venues, restaurants, learning about events that were taking place here in the city of Orlando. It revived my interest in this city. I have no plans on moving out of Orlando at any point in time in my life. I love it here. I think it's a great place to raise a family. I think there's a multitude of business opportunities. It's just a great place to be. We have a large airport, an airport that's getting larger. You got direct access to a beach 50, 45 minutes away in Daytona Beach. We have as many lakes, more lakes than you can ask for. Anything that you like between Lake Nona, International Drive, downtown Orlando is amazing. Disney Springs. And I know I'm sounding like a spokesperson for the city, but Orlando is just a great place. It's a city beautiful is what we call it.
I'm wondering, from the unique perspective you have, what does getting an event like the Pro Bowl games mean for Orlando as specifically a sports destination, sports town?
I can't help but think of a business owner's interest in Orlando growing, right? But obviously it brings more revenue, which is very important for small businesses, large businesses as well. I think just adds more. You know, we're building homes at one of the highest rates in the country. And we need to continue to build those homes because so many people are attracted to this area. We have to make sure we got enough housing for them. It impacts the city in ways that we're still discovering.
You mentioned, you called it a second win. You're getting to live out your dream as a business owner in Orlando. You were drafted by Green Bay. You played for Kansas City, New Orleans, Buffalo. You traveled to all these cities around America. I have to know, after your playing days were done, why of all places did you come back to where you were born in Orlando?
It was, again, I mean, I had always been a Florida boy. I got a ton of family here in Florida, Orlando specifically. My family was living up in Jacksonville. My mom's side of the family was living up in Jacksonville. And because we're such a close-knit family, when I made the decision to retire, it wasn't more than a year after that pretty much everybody migrated from Jacksonville down here to Orlando. And it wound up being a very fruitful move for them and my family. I have 3 daughters, and so they get to see their grandmother and their aunties and uncles all the time. We get to save a little bit of money on babysitters. It was just a no-brainer for me. Again, family had property here already. It was just a no-brainer. I still do a lot of things. I'm still heavily involved with the University of South Florida. I've been a color commentator for the football team for the past 5 years. I sit on the foundation board of advisors over at USF as well. So it allowed me to be in proximity to my alma mater.
That was former NFL player and current Orlando resident Samuel Barrington. Before we go, I wanted to share a quick comment with you from Peter O'Reilly, NFL Executive Vice President of Club Business and League Events. I want you to hear from him about the first NFL Girls Flag All-Star Game that is happening this Sunday, February 2nd at Camping World Stadium.
In this state, in this area, around the country and around the world, flag football is one of the fastest growing sports for girls and boys, for women and men. It's now an Olympic sport. And this weekend here in Orlando is a big showcase for that. Not just some of the best NFL stars playing flag football, but we have young girls and boys from 13 countries who won the opportunity to come to Orlando to compete in the International Flag Championships. They are so jacked up to be here and to be part of that, let me tell you. We've got an HBCU flag event going on, which will be fantastic. And for the first time ever, go HBCU. And then for the first time ever, we have a girls' high school flag all-star game. USA Today this year, for the first time, ranked the top 25 girls' high school flag programs in the country. States are sanctioning one by one, month after month. Some of those best girls' high school flag players will be in Camping World Stadium on the field on ESPN competing in that first ever all-star game. There's so much momentum around flag, and this community, this event is at the center of building that.
Again, that was Peter O'Reilly, NFL Executive Vice President of Club Business and League Events. A very exciting weekend happening here in Orlando. That is all for today's edition of Engage. We're going to be back Tuesday at 3 o'clock. A reminder, we always want to hear from you. Let us know what you want to hear more about, what you're glad you heard, what we should be talking about. Send me an email. It's engage@cfpublic.org. All of our shows are available on demand at cfpublic.org. And if you also want to give us some feedback in another way, you can check out the Central Florida Public Media app. It is free. In that menu, select Send Us a Talkback, record your question or feedback, then hit Send. And you can give us a call. The number again is 407-273-2300. The extension is 246. Leave us a voicemail. We want this show to engage with you. I'm Sharon Stone. Thank you so much for the company.